This B Podcast Network show is presented by IXL. IXL's all-inclusive online teaching and learning platform simplifies edtech needs and accelerates achievement in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts. IXL delivers personalized learning across a comprehensive pre-K-12 curriculum, including math, language arts, science, and social studies, and it helps you assess student performance through actionable real-time insights at every level of your school or district. This one solution performs work that typically requires dozens of different tools. Want to find out why so many leading districts trust IXL? Visit ixl.com/BE. That's ixl.com/BE. We're proud to be sponsored by MyFlex Learning. MyFlex Learning is a scheduling platform that helps middle and high schools meet the individual needs of all students. Schools can easily create and manage time for flex blocks, win time, activity periods, RTI, counselor and teacher appointments, and much more. And with its built-in accountability tool and reporting features, MyFlex Learning solves your challenges around getting kids where they need to be and understanding how flex time is spent. Make your flex time work for you. Visit myflexlearning.com/BE to learn more and receive $500 off the first year. That's myflexlearning.com/BE. Welcome in, listeners. We're so pleased to have you here again on the Authority Podcast on the B Podcast Network. It's my pleasure today to be joined by my guest, Dr. Stephen Gilliland. He is a university professor at Claremont Graduate University and teaches in the Division of Behavioral and Organizational Sciences and Drucker School of Management. He also serves as the founding director of the Maldonado Executive Leadership Institute, which is committed to discovery, discussion, and dissemination of insights into the future of executive leadership. Through more than 50 publications, his research examines managerial fairness and organizational justice, leadership ethics, and human resource staffing and decision-making, all topics that are relevant to all of you. So I think this will be a very valuable conversation. Along with his brother, Jim, Stephen is co-author of the book Pushing Up, which is available from Modern Wisdom Press. We'll put the link below to Amazon. Stephen, welcome to the Authority.
Thank you so much for having me, Ross. Glad to be here.
It's so great to have you here, Stephen. And I wanted to start out because this is a very particular structure of the book, the way you wrote it with Jim, kind of what it covers. So I'm going to start out with a really broad, big question, which is, what is this book about?
Wow, that's probably about the toughest question you could ask me. This book is about a 12-month journey through daily exercises that I did with my brother. But it's not an exercise book. It's about what we learned through this process of challenging each other to do a workout every day and to keep each other accountable through a process of daily text messages. By doing this, we deepened our connection. We learned about kind of challenges and commitments and pushing ourselves. But we just learned a lot about each other and what it means to be brothers and leaders and fathers and so on.
Absolutely. And so this title of this book, the book is called Pushing Up, and it's what 12 months of physical challenges taught two brothers about connection, leadership, and purpose. And so the 12 chapters, you go through 12 months of lessons and talk about these physical challenges you engaged in. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what that was, what initiated it, and what attracted you eventually to do it, despite the fact that it was quite challenging?
We started with a text message that my brother sent me on New Year's Eve. He said, "Hey, I've got this idea. How about you and I do a workout every day next year?" And it's New Year's Eve, and maybe I'd had a drink or two at that point. They said it seemed like a good idea. So I texted him back, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And then he made it real. And he said, "Okay, it doesn't matter if you're sick, doesn't matter if you're traveling, doesn't matter if you're tired. Every day a workout. And to keep each other honest, we're going to text a picture of doing that workout to each other, just to hold that accountability." And that gave me that pause of like, oh, wow, this is real. This is something big. But it was that willingness to take on that challenge of I'm going to be committing to something for a full year, for every day in that year. I don't know what the year is going to look like, but I'm committing to doing something every day. That was a big commitment. And I think that's what drove me to say yes, was to take on that commitment. The other part, beyond the challenge of it, was that opportunity to connect more deeply with my brother. I live in Los Angeles, he lives in Vancouver, Canada. We don't see each other that often, but whenever we do, we're close. And this was, I think, an opportunity for us to build that connection even deeper.
Yeah, that relationship is, of course, it's central to the book, as the two of you wrote it together and to what the book is about, but it's also central to the lessons learned from the book, some of which I think that you were aware of what you hope to achieve before you embarked on this, and thinking about what your relationship was and could be. And I believe the phrase that you had used to describe it was intermittent closeness, or right, where it's you had a very close relationship when you were together, but then you might go a long time apart and not necessarily talk as much. And might be the kind of thing where no matter how long you're apart, you come together and it's like you were never apart, but you recognize, like we all do, we're getting older, we're separated geographically. If we want to have more of a relationship, we need to actually like do something dramatic or intentional to make that happen, to spend more time together, to do things together. And that thought about the opportunities and missed opportunities, right? And I think predicting or anticipating what missed opportunities might be and saying, okay, we don't want that to happen. In my work, I've collaborated directly with hundreds of educators to support their success. Do you know which of their edtech frustrations comes up time and again? The sheer number of tools out there and the difficulty of knowing which ones schools like theirs are using to get results. iExcel is different. Not only does it perform the functions of dozens of tools, it's currently delivering results for 1 in 4 U.S. students, including those in 95 of the top 100 districts. Another major pain point that comes up: when a school is excited to implement a new tool only to find out the teachers hate it. Yikes. It helps to know that iExcel is loved and trusted by more than 1 million teachers, saving them time on prep work while enabling them to better support student learning. iExcel is research proven to accelerate achievement. Studies across 45 states show that iExcel schools outperform non-iExcel schools on state assessments. And independent research from Johns Hopkins University verifies that iExcel meets ESSA Tier 1 standards. With those results combined with iExcel's teacher-friendly reputation, what more could you ask for? If you have a goal to increase achievement for all students, make sure to find out what iExcel can do for you. Visit iexcel.com/BE for a demo. That's iexcel.com/BE. So how do we take advantage of this opportunity to do something together that keeps us close? But when you think about that element of it, what can you, if you can remember, right, like what were some of the things that you knew ahead of time? Okay, this is great for our relationship because it's going to allow X, Y, and Z. But then also, what were some of the things maybe that you realized as it went on and reflected on later to say, you know what, it was even better or different than I thought now that we have engaged in this together?
Good question. I did think that it was going to draw us together, but I didn't really anticipate how much it would. It was a daily text message, and sometimes it was just a photo, a couple of words. It wasn't like we were having deep conversations every day. But for some reason, the fact that we were on these parallel paths, each doing a workout, each maintaining that commitment to each other, each touching, into with each other through that simple text message, that provided a closeness that I didn't anticipate. And just a quick example, later in the year, it was a time in October, November, that's a difficult time for my brother, given loss in his life. And I could tell what he was going through on a daily basis by just the brevity of his text message. If it was just a couple words, I knew he was struggling. It really wasn't so much what he was saying, but I was so in tune with him that I knew what he was experiencing just from a word or two.
And I mean, there's something to be said just about doing things with people, right? That you want to have a relationship with, whether it's a sibling, a parent, a child, a colleague, a student, a friend, whoever it is, to say, like, we are engaging in an activity. There's a series of steps, there's challenges, we're working through them together, we're learning together as we go. That, I think, is what that could be, is overlooked a lot. I don't know, in my experience, right? That you always think it has to always be about talking or everybody has their own perception of what relationships are supposed to be. And but sometimes it's having something that's a specific shared activity, shared, just it's just between us, it's something we're doing together, and we're starting from the same point. And through that, through times when you are or are not in a lot of dialogue, you learn about each other, you learn those beats, and you have that intuition about things that even through digital channels, you can say, I have a pretty good picture of what's happening today, even though I only have this very small, narrow slice.
Really interesting because, in this day of technology and instant communication, we can connect with each other like never before. I mean, it's so instant the way we can keep in touch with each other. But so many of us are feeling more isolated than ever before. Our relationships have turned into these pseudo relationships where we keep touch with people on Facebook or Instagram, but we don't really know what's going on with them. We get these sanitized versions through their posts, and we may not have talked with them in half a dozen years. And to me, it's interesting that we use that same technology to connect more deeply than we ever had. And I
Right.
think that it was the combining the technology, the daily messages with this challenge and being on the challenge together that really drew that closeness.
Yeah, it relates closely to, we just here on the podcast network, we just published a series recently, and for Mental Health Awareness Month, and a series of different conversations, one of them being about the pros and cons of technology, right? And the ways in which it can connect us across the globe, but make us more isolated from people that are in proximity, right? We're texting from different rooms in the house, or we are getting that, sanitized, produced, overproduced perception of what people are going through, people who are close to us, that it might be obscuring things that we should be connecting about, or people we don't know as well. And then we're comparing ourselves to them and putting pressure and saying they seem like they're doing so great and I'm doing so poor, and all those kind of ways in which it kind of, for all of its power and benefit, and the fact that we're having this conversation right now on opposite coasts, that it can also have those detriments. And another conversation, or another point that I brought up in one of those conversations on the mental health piece, was the upside of accountability. And the topic was, why community is the foundation of learning. And we talked about online communities, but also just classrooms and in person, and how this word accountability, of course, is so frequently used as a cudgel. But that, for example, to a student, having a teacher that demonstrates that they care about them, that they're holding them accountable because they want them to do well, right? That they're paying attention, that they're
Yeah.
not being ignored, it can be a real positive. And also in peer-to-peer or any other kind of relationships, to say we're holding each other accountable because we're invested in each other. And certainly that was something that was certainly present in this.
I think that notion of accountability was one of those lessons that we got out of this that I hadn't anticipated. So we were accountable to each other through these daily text messages and photos of our workout, but ultimately the accountability was ourselves. And that was the real lesson, because I could have taken a fake photo. I could have messed up my hair and snapped a photo and said, oh, that was a really tough workout today. And he wouldn't have been anywise. The only one who would have known would have been me. And that would have been so wrong, because that would have completely violated the nature of the challenge. Because we did this challenge for no extrinsic purpose. There was no reward at the end. There was no trophy or anything like that. This was simply based on a commitment to each other. And if I had violated that commitment one day by not holding myself accountable, it would have kind of diminished the meaning of the whole experience, I think. So I think the powerful lesson there was through the accountability to each other, we really developed that self-accountability to ourselves. And wouldn't that be cool if students could develop that same sort of self-accountability through the role modeling of teachers?
Yeah, and the mutual accountability piece, it makes you mindful of how you're holding yourself accountable, or how you want to be accountable to the people that you're holding accountable, right? And say, okay, well, if I am kind of finding a way to cheat on that, then it's not, I'm not being fair to myself or to them, because everybody is operating on in good faith, hopefully, right? And in the
Yeah,
honor system here. And once that breaks down, then none of it really means anything. And then we realize, okay, for the last 10 months of this physical challenge, we've both been faking it. When we
right.
see each other at the holidays, we're like, man, I thought you'd be in better shape, But it's also, even to take it a step further, the power of someone believing in you, right? And then
Yeah.
certainly that relates to all of our folks in education, whether administrators in the classroom, and what that can be and how that can be exhibited and articulated and demonstrated authentically, right? And what it means to, and what we're believing in, I think, right? And believing in, yes, the outcomes, believing that people can achieve things, but also that we're believing their in their intentions, in their character, in their spirit, right? In all those things where in our lives, right? I mean, yes, we have some people like our family, our siblings that we might know quite well, but also if we're in a professional setting, whether in an office or in a school, we only know everybody to a certain extent. And so it would be disingenuous to act like I know everything about everybody, and I'm going to come on way too strong with some message of that's kind of a little tone deaf. But at the same time, it's like understanding what makes a difference to people, and how can we not make them have to intuit that, but no, look, I'm somebody of influence to this other person. The way I respond to them and engage with them can really make a difference for them, not just in their day, but in their long term, because they might not have somebody else who is demonstrating that belief in them, or they may have exactly the opposite. And how can I find those opportunities to really show that I believe in who they are and what they can do, and without needing to know what that is, right? It's based
Yeah.
on their dreams, their goals, their abilities, but how can I sort of, show that or speak that into them and take this out? And that's another thing that it often, in the haze of the day, how many things we're all doing, how many people we're all interacting with, how many of our own problems we have to deal with. Its relative importance and certainly potential to make a real impact doesn't always correlate with its spot on the priority list, but if we know how much it means to us when somebody else shows to us that they believe in what we can do, and how that gives us that energy to really give it a go, that should be a tremendous illustration of, okay, what are my opportunities to do this for others?
Yeah, I think so. And in many ways, it's the role of a really effective coach, of knowing what are those opportunities and how do I bring them out. I give you a quick example from the book. In February, my brother sent me a text, said, "Hey, I've got a great idea. How about we do 10,000 push-ups in March?" And I'm just like, "What? That's absolutely crazy." But he immediately broke it down like a coach did. He said, "No, this is completely possible. You can already do 40 to 50 push-ups." He said, "All you have to do," and I probably actually use those words, which is kind of scary, but all you have to do is 5 sets of 40 in the morning, another 3 sets in the afternoon or evening. That gets you 320 push-ups. You do that every day for the month of March, you hit 10,000. So you see what he's done there. He's issued me this audacious challenge. It's this crazy number of 10,000 push-ups. It just seems ridiculous. But then he's broken it down, and
Yeah.
he showed me how I could do that. That's a good coach. That's somebody who really kind of understands what motivates me, and how to help me overcome the mental challenge of there's no way I can do that.
Right. Yeah. Making the difficult achievable, making the ambiguous manageable, right?
Yeah.
Breaking things down into, okay, I know you can be successful, but first, let's start with defining, what do we want success to be? What does
Yeah.
that look like? What are the component parts of that? How do we make a plan for each of those, right? And then it makes it something that we can do, and it's not just words, and it's not,
Yeah.
right? And without starting with a specific number of 10,000, there would be no way to determine whether or not that was ever achieved. Let's do a lot of push-ups this month, okay? Like,
Right.
what's a lot, right? Or,
That's right. It's putting that line in the sand, or that mountain that you want to climb. It gave it something that just seemed audacious and crazy. Yeah.
yeah, and I got a couple other parts of that also, I think, really fit together, especially when you're working through things on your own and learning lessons from that and doing it together. And these are separate pieces that certainly fit together, is recognizing limits and preparing to fail, understanding that on this, if we're trying for something challenging, there's a high likelihood of not making it, or at least not making it the first time, or not making it the way that we thought we were going to make it, right? And that's just all that is a sign of a worthy goal. Right? And it seems like through those processes, there's a lot of competencies that develop. Confidence. Yeah, I mean, the more that we become comfortable with not always succeeding, the more, by contrast, the more confidence we have that we know what it takes to get where we want to go, right? Awareness, being aware of, yeah, there we have certain limitations, but we can, if we know what those are, we can succeed with them in view, right? It's not being ignorant to them, it's actually understanding how they're guide, and empathy and
Yeah.
understanding, look, I need to put myself in position to try and to fail, so that I can then extend that grace, support, recognition, belief to others. Right?
Yeah.
And it's very easy for the person, I think, who never challenges themselves in that way, never goes outside their comfort zone, never puts themselves in a limb, but maybe they're in a position where they're objectively doing well, so to speak, to just innately or reactively pass judgment on other people that they see that are having struggles, which is it's really hard to be a supportive person if you're doing that, right? Whether it's a personal relationship, professional, or otherwise, like, but it takes having experience. That's why so often I would say, you meant to reference coaches earlier, and if we talk about like coaches in sports, right? So often the best ones are the ones who are not the best players, but because they know how hard it is, and
Yeah.
but they understand that. The ones who were the top of the top elites have a very hard time understanding why somebody else is not doing as well as they did.
Yeah. I have been in leadership roles in higher education for almost 25 years. And I am such a natural introvert that being the extroverted leader that I have to be sometimes, it just does not come naturally for me. But I think that makes me really empathetic in terms of helping develop other leaders, because since it didn't come naturally for me, since I had to learn to develop the leadership side of Stephen, that gave me the empathy to help other people see, what does it take to develop those leadership skills? What does it take to really develop that empathy and understanding what others are going through?
Yeah. And there's when I have the same, and it may seem, I guess, I think to somebody who's an extrovert, they would maybe not think it makes sense, right, for somebody who's more introverted to be in to have worked in communications, to do podcasting and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But really, it's more about the inclination, the desire for authenticity, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes you can have one-on-one conversations and feel like you're able to express yourself and to hear what the other person's saying, and there's substance to it that's really comfortable to an introvert. But if you're in a large group where everything's very superficial, and or you start to kind of talk, and then it gets interrupted, and then you're sort of thinking, I'm no longer interested in this, right? Because it's taking me a good amount of energy and like psychic energy to participate here. And if I'm feeling like my participation isn't being rewarded, I think I'm going to shield myself from that. And now a quick break for a word from our sponsor, MyFlex Learning. Let's talk about flex time in schools. The potential benefits to our students make it totally worth exploring. There's more time for personalized learning, increased choice and agency for students, and the increased engagement that comes along with it, dedicated time for intervention, and overall, as school leaders, it provides you and your faculty more tools to increase academic achievement. But the implementation and management of flex time can be a challenge. Tricky logistics and a lack of clear accountability systems can prevent teachers from buying in. It can hold you back from ensuring students make good use of their time. That's why I'm pleased to share that MyFlex Learning provides a solution to these challenges and more. MyFlex Learning helps you create and manage flexible time for any purpose. And with the seamless SIS integration, a student locator, flexible daily rostering, and intuitive mobile app, it eliminates the common challenges of implementation and management. If you want to see for yourself, visit myflexlearning.com/BE to learn more and receive $500 off the first year of use. That's myflexlearning.com/BE. You'll learn all about MyFlex Learning, what it can do for your school, and you'll receive a $500 off offer for your first year. Check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting how many of us learn to do what it takes to put out that energy when we need to. But also, I think that notion you just introduced of shielding ourselves, of kind of looking out for ourselves, that's another important lesson, is that we've got to take that time for self-care and to rejuvenate ourselves when we do put ourselves out there. If I do a day or 2 days of leadership training with a group, I am just completely exhausted and spent there. I'm using all my extroversion skills to put myself on stage for that time. I need to take that time to recover. For me, that extroversion is a sprint. And then I got to figure out, how do I recover from that sprint? How do I attend to Stephen's need in the recovery process? And I think we don't give enough acknowledgement in our society to that need to recover. We recognize the heroes, we give accolades to those who put themselves out. But we should also be recognizing those who are taking the time to look after themselves and recover.
Right. Yeah, and particularly recovery with a plan, right? To say, okay, I have this period where I am sprinting, I have this period where I'm recovering, I have this period where, and that it's not, I feel like now I can't remember when, but this came up in something I was thinking of recently. Like, what if life's not a marathon? What if it's a series of sprints, right? What if it's not, we just keep moving, and then at a certain point, right, we've kind of lost a feeling in our limb, know where we are, but we just keep going, and versus saying, okay, take those recovery periods, then you can attack the things you want to attack at full speed and really go for it, and then move on to the next thing, and also feel a sense of accomplishment, right? Because in the marathon, the finish line is when you finish, versus the sprints. Okay, they can be a variable length, and we could say, okay, I achieved something. Whether it's something as simple as an interaction, a meeting, a conversation, or a big project, whatever it is, do I feel rewarded for having given my energy to that thing? Do I feel as though I had an opportunity to share some ideas? The ideas were heard. There's some idea of next steps or what that's going to lead to, or was it a complete dud? And now not only do I need to recover, but I feel as though that was not well spent, and now I'm less likely to try again next time. Again, that's where having that accountability part and the person who believes in you can be really helpful, because you can understand those micro moments to say, okay, let's create a sense of accomplishment around the effort, around the intention, around the progress, not just around the outcome.
I think has so much relevance for educators, because whatever level of education you're in, there's a natural rhythm to the year. We start off the fall, we're excited, we're meeting new students, you've got all that energy. And by the time summer comes around, it's those reserves are gone. And when we need to do that recovery over the summer, but throughout that year, there also are all those sprints. There are sprints around report cards or whatever the different challenges, the things that we've got to exert that extra effort. And it's those sprints throughout the year where we also have to take the time to recover. I think that educators that are on some sort of academic calendar do a pretty good job for the most part of recovering over the summer. But it's those more micro recoveries throughout the year that sometimes we're not as good at. And that's why come June, we're so burned out. We're so exhausted because we haven't been taking that time throughout the year to try and rejuvenate and to try and recover from those sprints.
Yeah. So through the journey that's detailed in the book, what perspectives did you gain on leadership? I mean, you of course, been working in leadership roles, right? And even in higher ed roles focused on leadership. So leadership about leadership for a long time. And yet this new thing, this new seemingly unrelated endeavor also gave some new lessons and perspective on leadership and what it can be and how it can be done.
There's a simple concept that I've known about for years, but I really experienced it deeply over the process of going through this journey and writing this book. And that concept is intrinsic motivation. This idea of that motivation that comes from within you. And we know through research that intrinsic motivation is a more sustaining type of motivation. The extra rewards, the recognition, though that provides that short-term boost, but it's the intrinsic that really feeds our soul and keeps us going. That's what we tapped into through this challenge, and whether it's the monthly challenges, whether the full year, we were tapping into an intrinsic motivation there. And when you do that, there's an excitement you get that I don't think enough of us feel when we head to work. There were days, we increased the push-ups at different points. And so by the time we hit December, we decided to do 30,000 push-ups in December. That's a crazy number of push-ups, 1,000 push-ups a day. The day before December started, I can remember that the night of November 30th, I was excited. I mean, I was almost giddy going to sleep because I was going to be starting on a crazy challenge next day. That is so messed up. I'm about to head into a month of an insane number of push-ups, and I'm so excited by it. That's intrinsic motivation. I think as leaders, if we could tap more into that, if we could get more of our people feeling that sense of excitement and enjoyment about what they're doing at work, we get more creativity, we get more empathy, we get more, all that stuff that we're hoping, teamwork that we're hoping to pull out of people, that becomes so much more natural when we tap into that intrinsic motivation. And I think that was one of those lessons that, yes, I've been teaching about it, but experiencing it throughout the course of a year just gave me a whole new understanding of that power of intrinsic motivation.
Yeah. And then that could provide lessons, right, to leaders about, I think, the concept of making things challenging yet achievable, right? And demonstrating a pathway to get there. It's telling that was December, right? It wasn't January. Okay, let's do 30,000. It was okay. We have a plan. We're going to get there. And now by the time we've gotten to this really difficult challenge, I know it's still going to be hard, but I know I can do it because I have evidence that I'm on track. I have achieved other challenges on the way to get here, and I've seen that in action. Same thing in any other kind of role, project, professional setting for leaders to think about, okay, what's the biggest challenge we're headed toward, a lot of which are going to be a lot more undefined or ambiguous than 30,000 push-ups, right? It's things that we need to achieve that we don't actually know what it is yet, or we don't know what all the terms around it are yet. But what are we doing on the way to getting there? And how am I making sure that my team members have confidence that they can do it? And that it's fulfilling to them, and that it's aspirational. It's positive motivation, which I think really fuels that intrinsic motivation. It's the dreams, desires, the people's drive to do a good job, right? However they define that, right? To feel as though they did something that was meaningful, but they just did something that they feel good about at the end of the day. And it also, this is the form of how I think sometimes extrinsic motivation can either augment or diminish intrinsic motivation, right? Is like, I thought about this a lot, and specifically with respect to some sports I played and the way some coaches have, but it's the same in other. Most people, I believe, are motivated to prove you right than to prove you wrong, right? The person who says, I believe in you, I'm supporting you, like I'm going to be here to help you, you can do this hard thing. I think the majority of people are motivated to do that when they're hearing that, and that aligns to the intrinsic motivation to feel as though I'm really living out my potential, versus the coach or the supervisor who questions you, doubts you, criticizes you, or says, you can't do this. I'm going to prove you wrong. There is exceptions to that, right? But usually
Yeah.
that's, at the very least, it's not sustaining. It might happen in a moment, it triggers an emotional response, and I say, you know what, I'm not going to let this person get the better of me, and I'm going to show them. But then at the end, you're so exhausted, you've expired so much energy, and over the, and certainly if it's a professional setting, you're not motivated to say, let me keep working for this person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing that happens when we put that sort of pressure on people and when we don't kind of tap into the intrinsic motivation is that people are tempted to cut corners. People are tempted to cheat. If we're motivated because of the fear that's being instilled in us or because of the rewards that we might get for opening all those bank accounts, then we might open a whole bunch of fake bank accounts, as Wells Fargo found a few years ago. It's when we use those crazy goals with pressure, without the recognition of what people are going through, that people start cutting corners and doing the unethical things. And I think that another one of those powers of the intrinsic motivation is that temptation to do the unethical thing is greatly diminished when we're intrinsically motivated. It's when we're being pushed by external reasons that we look for shortcuts to try and achieve that goal.
Yeah, it's, and I wonder, it's, yeah, that motivation to avoid punishment or avoid criticism rather than to earn, not even necessarily to earn praise, but to earn internal fulfillment. It makes me wonder, I have zero data on this, and I doubt anybody would, or else it wouldn't exist. But when I think about students who would find ways to cheat on assignments, I wonder what even the average grade is that they earn on those assignments. And I would almost like hypothesize that it's probably a B, something like that, especially if it's an exam,
Yeah.
that they're cheating to avoid failing, not to excel, right?
Yeah.
Versus the students who like aren't worried about failure, that are just saying, let me just do my best on this, that are more likely to get the higher grades because they've fully invested in it without that tentativeness. I mean, I could be completely wrong on that, but it just seems as though it's more about what you're avoiding and what you're protecting yourself against, and it's a defense mechanism, versus that, well, if I do a good job, even if I didn't really deserve it, then I'm going to get some great reward out of it. But sometimes that's ambiguous. One more point that I think is important here, and certainly super relevant to our listeners, is the third part: connection, leadership, and purpose. So we talked a lot about connection and leadership, but what did you learn about purpose through this?
Yeah, purpose is one of those ones that's so important for people in all settings. In education setting, it's important for our students to have that sense of purpose. For leaders, it's important that we develop our organizations with that people have this sense of purpose. One of the powerful lessons that I think that we learned through this about purpose was that importance of holding each other up, of these connections that we have, these relationships that we have. So often we think of purpose in terms of what we achieve in life, what we acquire, what position we rise to in organizations. It's some sort of achievement-oriented purpose. What this journey told us was that the purpose was not about achieving 365 workouts. The purpose that we found in this whole year-long journey was about deepening connections with ourselves, with our kids, with our spouses. It had ripple effects. It wasn't just the connection in the relationship between the two brothers. it had connections to so many other areas of our lives. And it really highlighted and put a spotlight on those relationships being the foundation of purpose, the importance of what we were doing and why we're here on this planet.
Did you find I think there's something about the personal connection to, or the personalization of the purpose. Certainly if we're speaking here to educator, right? Like, it's a purpose-driven vocation. And everybody is aware of that, and that's what attracts one to go into that type of profession, to say, look, there's a mission here, and purpose is to help students, to help them develop, so on. And yet, just probably walking into an organization, taking what they have up on the wall, or if an organization, a school, for example, fails to even define its own unique mission and just is like, well, everybody kind of knows why we're here, that even though everybody has some idea of what that is, there's something that's not as sustaining about it as when we're able to really personalize that and say, okay, like, this is what this is all about, but my personal connection to it is this is why I'm here. And then as a result of what I'm doing here, it enables XYZ, right? As a result of the work that I'm doing here that's really connected to my purpose, also it enables me to have a positive relationship with my family, because I'm feeling fulfilled from my work, and that carries over into that, and I'm in a good mood, right? It enables me to provide for them because I'm making a living, and but it's really hard for that to happen even in the most a nonprofit, a charity, a school, whatever it is, organizations that you would say, well, of course, the only reason people are there is because they believe in the purpose. But there's a difference, I think, between believing in the purpose of something else and personalizing your connection to that.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick example. Years ago, when I was the vice dean of the business school at the University of Arizona, one of the days when walking in, I stopped one of the custodians who was working in the main entry hall, and I thanked them. And I said, you keep our building looking beautiful. And that's the first impression people have of the business school when they walk in, is looking at the site. And I just want to thank you for managing the first impression so effectively for us.
Yeah.
I got incredible gratitude from that custodian, because nobody had ever said that to him before. I was highlighting for him his purpose at the school, but in the return, I got a sense of my purpose as a leader, of helping him see the broader purpose, showed me that's part of my purpose. That made me feel a stronger connection to what I was doing, that it more important than managing the budget and so on was helping people see their individual purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a very similar situation back when I was in high school and visiting colleges, made the difference between the school that ended up getting my tuition dollars and the one that didn't. The one that I thought I was visiting, I just wasn't impressed with the condition of the campus. The one that was like, oh, we might as well go there while we're also here, I was like, wow, I love it here. This is beautiful. It's pristine.
Yeah.
And it is that impression that is overlooked, but it makes the difference. Stephen, let's close on this one. If there's one of the lessons from this book that you learned, that you've written about and articulated, that you think everybody listening should really think about this one and see how they can apply it, is there one that stands out that you would really want to reinforce?
I think it's the one that really started our journey, and I would call it an I will commitment. In so many things in life, when we commit to it, we implicitly put a disclaimer in the back of our mind, barring unforeseen circumstances. I will try. Our most common commitment is, I will try. I'll do my very best. We took it one step further on this journey, and we turned that I will try into an I will commitment. A 100%. It doesn't matter what's happened. I will. That was the power. That was the one that really opened my eyes of, wow, if we can't do it all the time in our life, but if we really want to go on a journey, let's try starting it with an I will commitment. And so I'd ask the listeners, what would it, if you had a chance to commit to one thing, what would it be with an I will commitment? Who would you then bring into that commitment with you to help share that accountability, and then do it. To take it on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great one to leave on. And, there's one definition even of commitments is exactly that. If it's a commitment, then it will happen, right? That it's things that are in your control, that there's no reason why it won't happen other than you didn't do it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to think about it. Listeners, once again, the book is called Pushing Up: What 12 Months of Physical Challenges Taught Two Brothers About Connection, Leadership, and Purpose. You can find it on Amazon. We'll put the link there below. Of course, you can also find it at other booksellers. And please do subscribe to The Authority for more in-depth author interviews like this one, and visit bpodcast.network to learn about all of our shows. Dr. Stephen Gilliland, thank you so much for being on The Authority.
Thank you. I've had a wonderful time. Appreciate it.
This has been the Authority Podcast, hosted by Ross Romano, edited by Gage Sanderson.
Do you want to simplify your school's technology, save teachers time, and improve students' performance on state assessments? You can do it all, but don't waste another minute. Head straight to ixl.com/BE to learn how IXL's research-proven teaching and learning platform can help you achieve all of these goals. That's ixl.com/BE.